Hello and good evening to everyone. Thank you for joining us on time. Welcome to our very first session of Apparently. And our topic for today is tummy time really crucial for babies and other practices. So this will deal with a medical perspective on raising children. Now, apparently, is of course run by Grander Together, which aims to cultivate stronger intergenerational families in Singapore. It is an initiative of Cultivate SG, and we are very grateful to Moms for Life, Dads for Life, and SG families for their support for our event. So, a quick introduction of Apparently. We are basically doing a series of panel discussions between people across generations, bringing their professional or personal perspectives to help strengthen intergenerational families. So, our panelists for today that will be discussing the topic at hand would be Dr. David Ng. So, Dr. Ng is a senior consultant at Raffles Medical. He is an accredited pediatrician with a subspecialty in allergies in children. Dr. Ng's practice includes a wide range of common childhood conditions. He has experience in developmental assessment and vaccinations. And then we have mother and daughter, Allison and Ariel Lim. So Allison is the chairperson of Grander Together and is on a mission to empower grandparents and encourage connections between generations. She is a mother of three and a happy grandparent. Ariel is the oldest daughter of Allison and the chairperson of Cultivate SG. She has a background in both journalism and law and is now pursuing a master's in public policy. She is also a mother of three. So, with that, welcome once again. Thank you for the rest of you who are joining us. And so, prior to this, Alison and Ariel had sent across some questions to Dr. David Ng. And so, Dr. David Ng has prepared a presentation to run us through some of the topics that we'll be discussing today. And there'll be other questions that come along. So, if you have any questions, right at the bottom of the screen, there is a Q&A option. So, you can type your questions in the Q&A box by clicking at the bottom of your screen in the Zoom platform, and you can ask any questions that you like. You can either ask them anonymously or you can ask them by referring to your name. So these are the options available to you. So without further ado, I'll hand the time over to Dr. David. So Dr. David, please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me for this talk. Let me just start to share my slides. Okay, good evening, everyone. So the talk that I'll be, so I think this talk will be split into a number of sections. This first section will be on I'll just be running through some slides on raising children and changing practices in raising children. So I guess one of the things that we want to focus on is for this talk is why are there even changing practices in medicine and our recommendations to parents and to grandparents as well. So why is it that previously people would say sleep, there's no such thing as sleep training, but yet now sleep training is such a big thing, why is what previously we would give our parents or our grandparents would give water to us as babies. Why is it now that, hey, the doctor keeps saying no, cannot, and when is baby like weaning safe, when the baby choke, can we really give solid foods like that to babies? So I guess the one of the questions that I'll strive to answer is, why do medical recommendations keep changing? Science is science, right? I mean, right is supposed to be right and wrong is supposed to be wrong. So the very simple reason for this is because I think as human knowledge progresses, science progresses as well. Sometimes what we think of as the truth is not always going to be the truth. And we realize subsequently as we study topics more that that certain things are right, whereas previous other things may be wrong. A very good example of that would be that just 2,000 years ago, so prior to 5th century BC, century BC, right? People used to believe that the world was flat. Then subsequently, I think a lot of smart people thought about it, and then they realized that the world is round. So now this is quite common knowledge. People have been stepping on the moon, and they can see the moon, the world, and the world definitely looks round. So I think that's quite good evidence that the world is not actually flat. Similarly, right, the people used to have very rigid views on gender roles. Women used to have certain gender roles prescribed to them in society. But just barely 200 years ago, the women's rights movements started, and since then, our knowledge and expectation of gender roles has changed. So even medical theories have evolved. So prior to the 19th century, people used to believe in the humoral theory or the miasma theory. This is a theory whereby people used to believe that health is dependent on the fluids and the gases in the human body, and a mismatch or an imbalance is what causes disease. Then from the 19th century, we came to realize that a lot of disease was due to germs, and hence came about the germ theory. People used to believe that hand washing is not necessary, but now we know that hand washing kills germs and it actually helps to preserve lives. People used to think that mental illness was due to possession, sin, weakness. But now we know that there's a biological basis to mental illness. More recently, people used to believe that heart disease was due to dietary cholesterol and saturated fats only. Now we understand that there are multiple factors, inflammation within the body as well as the blood vessels, sugars, genetics of the individuals, as well as various other lifestyle factors, not just dietary intake. So this is a picture of Dr. Ines Semmelweis. He was a anesthesiologist who realized that who actually was living in an era whereby when gynecologists or obstetricians would not wash their hands before medical procedures, and a lot of women would die after childbirth. He championed the use of hand washing before surgical procedures, and this went on to save many lives. So without further ado, I'll go into some of the questions that I'm sure this is the meat of our discussion. I'm sure this is probably what you all are interested in. So the first thing is it okay to feed an infant water? And when is it safe to start? Again, I think our general views we used to think that, hey, baby must feed water, they cry, if we don't feed water, they become constipated and all that. So is it actually safe to feed an infant water, and when is it safe to feed? The reason why it may not be safe in a baby who's too young is that the babies the kidneys are like babies, like the child themselves. So it's not able to process free water very well. And so if we give free water to a baby who's too young or too much free water, then that can cause problems. Problems that too much water can cause, right, is because it can include like an imbalance of the solutes in the blood, specifically low blood sodium. This can lead to problems like seizures. So I guess the golden question is how much water and when can we give it? So in a child who's less than 6 months old, it is generally recommended that no water is given at all. All fluids should be given in the form of milk, and the milk, if it is in the form of formula milk, should be appropriately diluted. And otherwise, and unless specifically instructed to by a medical professional, it should not be further diluted or concentrated. Between 6 months to 1 year old, it is good to start to give some water. Otherwise, there will be problems, especially since this is the period that people would generally start weaning. That means to give solids. You would generally aim to give 60 to 120 ml of water per day. Usually, I would recommend that with each of the solid meals, you aim to give about 30 to 60 ml of water. And then this would achieve 60 to 120 ml of water a day if you're giving 2 solid meals. Above 1 year of age, then the child would be able to drink water freely. You still would then pump the child with water, but you would go by thirst. If the child's thirsty, you would give water. If the child is not thirsty, it may not be necessary to give water. This is also important to note that one shouldn't swing to the other extreme as well, especially during the weaning period. It is important to start to give some water, otherwise your child will become constipated. Your stools will become very hard, very dry. The next question that we are trying to tackle is tummy time in a baby crucial. So I think, again, this is something that emerged fairly recently. Before this, I mean, who would talk about tummy time, right? I mean, just let the baby be, lie on his back even, why is tummy time even important? So what is tummy time? Tummy time is placing a baby on the stomach while awake and supervised by an adult. This means that you shouldn't leave a baby on the stomach and walk away and go and cook a meal. The problem with that is that baby may get tired and then he may choke, or he may be very upset. He or she may be very upset. So during tummy time, the baby should always be supervised. Doing tummy time strengthens the baby's neck, shoulders, and arm muscles. This, of course, helps them to grow up stronger, helps them to learn to control and move themselves, helps to reduce and prevent a flat head as well, because then they aren't always lying on their back all the time. So this allows them to move around, and their head is able to develop properly. Another question that I will try to address is whether white noise helps a baby to sleep. Yeah. Again, previously people would not have talked about white noise at all. So one question is, what is white noise? White noise refers to sounds that mask other sounds occurring in the environment. Simple examples of white noise include static, rainforest sounds, or beach sounds, basically very nice, soothing sounds. These sounds can aid sleep. They can mask household noises as well. So it's been shown that using white noises can help babies indeed fall asleep faster, and sometimes it can help their sleep quality as well. Some important things to note is that the noise shouldn't be too loud, otherwise it can affect their hearing. Another problem is that it doesn't always work. I think it works for some babies, but not all babies. And sometimes some people may be concerned that using a white noise may make them dependent on the sound to sleep. So without the sound anymore, they may have difficulty sleeping. Your radio that plays your white noise doesn't work, then hey, suddenly your baby cannot sleep. So what are some recommendations or stipulations for white noise? White noise should be at most 50 decibels. 50 decibels refers to a quiet conversation, so probably slightly softer than the sound that you hear me talking to you through this talk. The machine playing white noise should also be placed about 2 meters away, so it doesn't, so the constant noise doesn't become like, rock music for the child and doesn't destroy the hearing. Another question that we wanted to address was how to discipline a child. I think this question was strongly recommended and for me to address. Yeah. So I refer to this study that was performed by the Children's Society a couple of years ago, in conjunction with in conjunction with Yale NUS. They did a study on physical discipline in Singapore. Yeah, so problems with it and whether or not it actually made a difference to children's lives. Yeah. So this slide I thought was interesting. Yeah. So in their study, they interviewed many families, and they found that among Singaporean families, about 50% or around 45% would have used physical punishment on their child. This means caning, hitting a child, and about 30% would use it frequently, several times or more in a year. So in other words, still fairly common physical punishment or corporal punishment. So why is it not recommended anymore? So this study actually goes on to ask the parents as well as the young adults who are the outcome of corporal punishment, whether or not they felt that physical punishment is effective. So you can see that everything red, probably not good, right? Yeah, so among parents, the vast majority of them felt that physical punishment was not effective, even never or most of the time, and less and only about a quarter felt that hey, maybe it was still effective in disciplining a child. Young adults represent the outcome of corporal punishment, and you can see that the vast majority of them felt that it was not effective. About 60 to 70% felt it was not effective, and barely 28 and barely 30% felt that it was effective. So what were some problems with corporal punishment? Many of the young adults who were the victims of caning by their parents felt that corporal punishment was ineffective in teaching values of right or wrong. They felt that it was distressing for them. Yeah. So after being undergoing corporal punishment, they felt that they were traumatized by it, basically. It also led to a strained parent-child relationship, so they felt that they were no longer so close to their parents. So that's clearly not going to be a good thing. And negative mental well-being. This means that they were upset during their childhood and subsequently as well. So again, this study would seem to suggest among Singaporeans, corporal punishment may not be the best. So if corporal punishment is not being advised, then what should we do, right? So just a brief slide on positive discipline. In other words, what we should do to teach our children or something to aspire towards at least. Some techniques to teaching children would be firstly show and tell. This means show our children what is the correct thing to do and tell them calmly and with words what is the correct thing to do. Help them to set limits, this and this amount of hours of screen time. Beyond that, no, cannot already. There's something known as natural consequences. This means let them do to a certain extent, as long as it's not too dangerous, whatever they were trying to do. Let them realize the consequences of their actions so that they will learn from it. A good example of this is running around at home when they fall, not to pick them up too soon. After they stop crying, pick them up and explain to them, hey, you fell because you were running around at home. So maybe you shouldn't run around at home. Logical consequences, this means that, for example, you have set a limit of iPad timing. The child has exceeded the limit for iPad timing, so you tell them you have spent all your time for your iPad already, so that's why now no more TV time, because you were only allowed 1 hour of screen time, you spend it all on iPad, so now cannot watch TV already. So this is a logical consequence. Hearing them out, that means sitting down and letting them rant at you about why they think that what they did was right. And then telling them calmly why it's not. Reinforcing good behavior, so that means that when they are good, you don't just keep quiet, you say, good job, well done. When they do bad things, speak to them firmly and tell them and explain to them why it's not such a good idea. Redirect bad behavior. This means that your boy with a lot of energy running around and tearing up your house, right? You can actually redirect it. You can maybe bring them to a playground to move around and expand their millions and millions of joules of energy. You can direct them to sit down and read a book together with them, so that then at least they will not be tearing around and destroying all your furniture. Timeout. So this means sitting them down in a quiet area and not to talk to them, not to interact with them. The general guidelines will state that timeout is allowed at a rate of up to 1 minute per year of age. That means that if you're 1 year old, you're allowed 1 minute of timeout. 2 years old, you're allowed 2 minutes of timeout, and so on and so forth. So that ends this bit of my talk. Again, this was, I think, some of the more commonly asked and requested questions. So I've addressed them in slides. Later on, we will be open to the floor to ask more questions, and I'll be happy to answer them. Okay, to you, Darius.
Thank you, Dr. David. Thank you for all the insights and reflections. Now, we have Alison and Ariel, and I think I'll hand the time over to them now, and perhaps they can share with us some of their insights or reflections, because as mother and daughter, of course, they have been dealing with this topic of grandparenting and challenges that may arise as they are taking care of the grandchildren. So please, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them right in the Q&A. Feel free to type them. I already see some questions in the Q&A list. And if anything pops to mind, feel free to immediately just key it down. And then during the audience Q&A, which will take place towards the end of today's presentation, we can deal with some of the questions that you have asked. So without further ado, let me hand the time over to Alison and Ariel.
Really? You want to go first?
Sure.
Okay, maybe I'll just start first. So I'm in my 30s, and my mom helps out a lot with me. So at first, when I had my first kid, I had a lot of different rules. I was reading up all the different like mom forums and all the different science behind things. Are like I think there are some new practices like baby-led weaning, sleep training, which are all really new to my mom. So for those who are not clear, like baby-led weaning is where you let the child kind of like choose and explore food, versus like, when we were growing up, our parents just put the food in front of us and they're like, hey, this is your bowl, eat it, finish it. It's a very, very different kind of approach. To be honest, I started out and tried it out for a while, and then I did a mix of like the old school method and then the new method. But I think Dr. David might have more information about baby-led weaning if you guys are more interested. So yeah, my mom and I we quarreled like a lot. Okay, but not just over like new theories and all that. We just have like inherent personality clashes. So it was a very rocky road for the both of us. But I still needed her around to help, because sometimes I do some work and I also attend school. And now with 2 and then 1 more on the way, I do rely on her help a lot. She also works, so we kind of just cooperate with each other and fit our schedules with each other. And my parents-in-law also do step in a lot to kind of provide support for my children. So I think in a lot of this journey, I think my mom and I just kind of, I mean, we're not experts in this. Maybe just like 5 years of figuring things out together. There've been times where we fight until we fought until we cried, or like, and then after that you message and then like, reconcile after that. So I think my mom has some handles on how to manage these things because her EQ very high and she always says my EQ is very low. But anyway, I'll leave her to share some bits. Yeah.
I saw in this the list of questions, what should I do if my mother refuses to listen, even if I present all the medical facts and evidence to her? For a moment, I thought it was Ariel who just sent this question. I hope your mom is kind of tuning in. And sometimes it's hard when your daughter tells you, right? But like today, suddenly after hearing Dr. I'm like, wow. Oh, I should have, talked to him earlier, right? When it comes from another person, it's so much easier to accept. But I must say that, yes, I agree with Ariel that it was really quite a challenge trying to be the grandmother that I want to be. But having gone through and still going through the journey, my first granddaughter is already 5. The second one is 2. I feel like, and kind of preparing for this session, I sat down and asked myself, what are some things that I'm getting from this journey and what might be useful for, some of you who are listening to this. So I want to use, as a trainer, right, you thought of kind of things of acronym and stuff like that. So I want to use the word grand, to sort of sum up some of my learning, and I'm still learning, or honestly still learning, but what are some things that have helped me thus far? So the first the GRAND, right? GRAND, it stands for, to me, gratitude, remember, R for remember, A for ask, N for know, and D for device free. So let me just share with you the first G, right? Gratitude. Having put aside all these challenges that I have, I'm just deeply, deeply grateful to Ariel and Edwin, my son-in-law, for letting me be in this role as a grandma. I know a lot of friends who have kids who are married and they're still waiting to be grandparents. And I just feel like I'm such a privileged person. It's a very privileged position to be in because I consider it's one of my best life stages. It really brings me a lot of joy, and also research shows that it brings you a lot of other benefits, right? So that to me is gratitude. And I feel like when I remember to be grateful, all the other challenges seems less challenging, right? Now, R for me is remember my role. My role in this instance as a grandmother is not the main character. I'm only a support cast. So I must keep remembering myself, grand, not mother, yeah? And, with that, I just remind myself that I am an experienced parent, but I'm an inexperienced grandparent. So I must continuously learn. And, being exposed to even, the top panels and other discussion has helped me to realize that there's just so much to learn in this role. And I have to sort of also remember that what has helped me in the past will not bring me to the future, right? So I need to be in touch with what's happening at the moment itself. Now, A is really the way we communicate. So I need to learn. I told my daughter that, I need to learn how to be micromanaged because she has a certain style, and I really need to learn to ask more rather than assume. Because, in my natural self, I was like, oh, I've done this for you. Why can't I do it? So that's why all these questions that we pose to Dr. Fu, like, I fed you water, but you're still alive, So I must remember that I live in a different time now. So don't assume, but really ask. And I think when I do that, I begin to clarify expectations. And there are times when there's clash, I must also find the right time to talk to my daughter in the right way. I realize when I text her and give her feedback, she's a little bit more open rather than face-to-face, because she's so eloquent, and every question she posed to me, I sometimes cannot answer. And I just, get so worked up, right? So one of the ways is to find out, your children's way of receiving information. So I kind of have to give her due respect for how she wants to dress her kids, how she wants to feed her, what she wants to feed her kids. and really remember my role, support cast. Yeah. Now, N, that stands for no secrets. Yeah. Initially, when I kind of like was so excited about, this grandparenting role, I remember there were times when I just bring my granddaughter, Grandma is going to do this for you. Let's not tell mommy. And then my daughter got to know about it and she was really upset. And I kind of understand that when I do that, I actually undermine her authority. And I'm also building kind of like sides, me and my granddaughter versus their parents. And I don't think this is a healthy position, especially when they are so young. So, and my granddaughter is actually, I realize she can't keep secrets. She will say, oh, grandma has a secret. And this is what, they're like, okay, I will lose anyway. So let me not even have secrets with her. So if there's a secret, mommy knows about the secret. Yeah. And the last one, D, is really, I think I learned my lesson about being, to really stay away from device, so device free. I used to entertain my granddaughters, with a movie or a little, song, because it's very easy to get them kind of engaged. But, having gone through all these studies about how devices are affecting them, I've also chosen not to do that because it's so easy to give it to them, but very difficult to take away from them. And also even myself, even just now I was playing my granddaughter and my granddaughter said, Grandma, stop using your phone. And I realized that was a reminder for me to be fully present and to put all this aside so that they know that I'm there for them. So GRAND, gratitude, remember, ask, no secrets, and device free. So it's not a work for me. I'm still learning, not much, still trying to, see what are the other things I need to improve on. Yeah. So that's my take.
Yeah, I also want to chime in a bit. I think, but this is just more on parenting. I guess after 4+ years of reading a lot on the internet, sometimes I think new moms can also get a bit anxious, and there's a lot of information overload. And sometimes when you read the science, or maybe it's about using devices, maybe it's like the kind of food that you want to feed your children. Sometimes there can be a lot of guilt and shame. But I think what my friends and I, because we talk about these things all the time, my friends are also in a similar journey, having, multiple kids. And we've kind of come to realize that, for example, sleep training, you have like the super pro sleep training parents, and then you have the super anti sleep training, super pro co-sleeping parents. And then sometimes we kind of like argue over it. But I also realized that it's really what works for your family. And I think part of me also kind of let go, because last time everything used to be such big consequence. Like, oh my gosh, if my kid doesn't sleep at 8 p.m. today, tomorrow she's not going to wake up at early. Then her naps will all be messed up, and then the whole day will be ruined. So there was a lot of anxiety in me, and then I passed anxiety on to my mom. So my mom was like, oh my goodness, you need to stop being so Nazi about, so crazy. Because I definitely went through a phase where I was high strung and anxious, and like I just wanted to be the perfect mom, and that was like super impossible. So even things like corporal punishment, for example, I admit that I do cane my children, like definitely not occasionally, like very, very rarely, although there are threats where they really cross the boundaries. But what is very important when you do this kind of physical punishment, even if it's like smacking or something, which I know some people still do, is that it's always in the context of love, and there must always be emotional connection as a foundation of the relationship. So I would never rush to punish. Maybe my mom might disagree because she's like, why are you so fierce with your kids? But anyway, I always think that all these happen in a context where there's very like I'm close to my children. I talk to them. I spend a lot of time with them, and it's really at personal comfort levels also. And it's important to have community so that you have friends who will check in on you. You learn from your friends, what works for them. But then again, what works for them might not work for you. So it's a lot of, I would say, compromise, give and take, a lot of relearning, unlearning, and learning again. And I think so far it's been quite an exciting journey. And also for me and my husband, like sometimes we disagree because we were brought up, every family, every two persons who come together in marriage come from different families and have vastly different childhood experiences. So the way my husband was brought up is like super different from me. Like I saw a question on in-laws, So we always have a rule that if there's anything we disagree, if there's anything we disagree on with our in-laws, the original son or daughter will deal with it. So if we disagree with my mom, I will talk to her. If we disagree with my father-in-law, my mom-in-law, he will talk to them. So I don't really like to, because it gets awkward to kind of talk to your in-laws and disagree with them. Although in some very serious situations, I'm not very sure what kind of situations, you might have to step in. I've had friends step in situations they really disagree with, and they just step in to intervene and tell the in-laws, like, you cannot do that, for example. So again, general principles, but there may be exceptions. And then I would also say that if husband and wife don't agree, this is also a very tricky question because again, it's to do with upbringing and worldview and philosophies, and we have to be very careful, like how deep is a disagreement? Is it like one of those disagreements where you can talk it out and then you can talk to your friends and eventually find some compromise? Or is it like a deeper disagreement where like you maybe need marriage counseling? I'm not very sure. But I would say just be open to share with people things that you disagree with, and again, back to having a community of friends who will support both you and your husband together. So I think sometimes we have communities where only the wife is supported, and then the husband is like alone, and then maybe all the wife's friends support her, which is very normal, by the way. I also have chats with my friends and like complaining about my husband sometimes. But I also feel that the couple should have couple friends to support both of them and kind of find a way forward together instead of separately. Yeah, so those are just my 2 cents for some of the questions I've kind of seen. Yeah.
I just also want to add on here that if it's really against your value, then you just have to tell your daughter. Like I remember when I was helping her and she said, "Mom, you have to do sleep training." I said, "Never. I can help you with anything except sleep training." The crying was just too much for me to bear. So she knew my limit and we had to agree on, disagreeing. So I stay out from that, that area. And I'm glad she's not doing sleep training with the second one anymore. So things change. Yeah, so you just kind of wish that things would sort of, you can sort of like accommodate and see how things go. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Alison and Ariel. So I think we've heard a lot from Dr. David, from Alison, from Ariel about various perspectives. And I would just like to start off this interaction point of time by posing one question to Dr. David. And so one question is this, the topic of baby-led weaning, right? So maybe I'll just ask, what are the benefits, if any, of baby-led weaning as compared to the normal way of feeding children? And perhaps you could share from your medical perspective on this particular topic.
Yeah, thank you, Darius, for the question. I happen to have some slides on this, so maybe I will just, which I didn't initially plan to present, but maybe I'll just share about this. So, because I think it's actually quite an interesting question. Wasn't planning to do this because I think for limits of time initially. So, baby-led weaning. So I guess the question, what is baby-led weaning, right? Baby-led weaning refers to offering bite-sized foods to baby to feed themselves. Baby decides what to eat and how much to eat. This is as opposed to traditional feeding patterns whereby the parents decide what the child eats and how much. So I think the question is, what are the advantages of baby-led weaning? Firstly, the baby does the feeding, so less work for parents, easier life for you guys, not really, but maybe somewhat, yeah, a little bit. There's improved social interaction because you're no longer hounding your child to eat so much. You're talking with them, you're laughing with them. Your meal times are a lot more enjoyable. Feeding patterns are more healthy because your child actually decides the amount to eat and what to eat, so they're more likely to eat actually. So this this actually helps to generate a pattern whereby the child is willing to feed. Yeah, it reduces picky eating behaviors. So because again, the child is not actually being picky, they choose the food on themselves. So it has been shown that this actually helps to reduce picky eating. And studies have shown that there is actually no increased risk of choking. The disclaimer here is that baby-led weaning needs to be done properly. So if you're planning to do the baby-led weaning, it doesn't actually mean that you throw a carrot at them and then expect them to chew on it like a beaver. It doesn't work out that way. They may actually choke on that actually. The important thing is to read up a little bit on what to start. I mean, simple things to start would be, for example, fruits and vegetables. Fruits wise, you must choose those that's a little bit on the softer side. Examples include banana, avocado, strawberries, kiwi, mango. Vegetables should be cooked, i.e. boiled, and peeled. It shouldn't be raw. Vegetables like broccoli, spinach, sweet potato, carrots, pumpkin. Proteins can be considered. Tofu is an easy one. I think in our Asian culture, yogurt is another good one. Boiled or scrambled egg is a good choice as well. And ground soft and shredded meats and fish. What to avoid? Small, round, hard foods like uncut grapes or whole nuts. These can pose a choking risk. Hard foods like uncooked vegetables. Again, don't give them a raw carrot to work through, not a rabbit. Tough meats and steak is also not a good idea. I hope that helped to answer the question.
Okay, thank you very much. There's a question posed by one of our audience, and I think it's a related point. So the question is how to encourage young children to eat vegetables and fish if they refuse to eat it. So, Dr. David, any thoughts?
I think this is a complicated question. So oftentimes we see a lot of children become picky about 1.5 years old. It sort of ties into the terrible twos. So dealing with a picky child can be difficult, but it's also important to understand that's actually part of a developmental stage. Again, because around this period of time, babies are going through terrible twos. One of the areas that they control in their lives is what they put into their mouth. Again, sometimes that's why baby-led weaning seems to reduce pickiness because then feeding is no longer prescribed. The child actually already decides what he wants to eat and how much. So that sometimes seems to reduce pickiness. To directly answer your question, right? Again, it's important to baby-led. So pickiness, there is no simple answer. We would say that it's important to try several aspects. Firstly, we will need to keep pushing it. What studies have shown us is that, for example, if your child is picky and refusing to eat, say, spinach, for example, the studies would suggest to us that you just need to keep trying. They sort of acquire the taste of the food after a while. And our recommendation would be to keep trying multiple times. Studies show that you have to try anywhere from 15 to 20 times. This means that you give spinach on one meal, they don't want to take it, that's fine. You stop after a while, hopefully before everyone is in tears, including the baby and you. But the next meal or the next day, you will try the same food again. There's also one aspect of it is to keep trying actually. Another aspect of it is also to experiment broadly. So while you keep trying certain foods, you are also free to try different types of foods. Oftentimes, babies are picky because we are moving up on the food texture. We are no longer giving so soft foods anymore. We're trying to give sliced foods, finely chopped foods, or cut foods. So a lot of babies and kids find that they don't like the textures of the foods. So it is important to experiment with different types of foods. For example, if they maybe don't like if they don't like chopped carrots, say for example, maybe you can try chopped broccoli. You can try different types of vegetables. You experiment with different textures and different flavors. Sometimes that helps. Again, right, the last thing that I can recommend and to suggest would be to remember that you're dealing with a child who's entering terrible twos. So this means that you would then need to learn to draw boundaries for them. Again, part of it is them learning to part of it is a power struggle with the parents. So it is important to sometimes draw boundaries with them. If feeding has become part of the power struggle, then it's important to explain to them carefully that the importance of eating, trying to get them past this terrible twos phase.
Okay, thank you, Dr. David. And there are a lot of questions coming in. So this question is for this one. As a grandparent, should the grandparent carry out the discipline of the grandkid, or should the grandparent relay the problem to kids' parents and let the parents do the disciplining? I think let me ask Alison and Ariel, and perhaps you can share your thoughts on this topic.
Okay, I realized that some as when you're dealing with kids, right? you cannot wait too long. They need to know the severity of the issue itself. So I am spending like maybe 50% of my time mediating and kind of like trying to make sure that they follow certain rules. I wouldn't say that the way I punish is the same, or discipline is the same as my daughter. I've got my own way. And to me, sometimes it's discipline, but my daughter doesn't think so. I use a lot of distraction, trying to just get them off the thing. But for example, if they are rude to one another, they are not kind to one another, I will actually mediate and say, okay, this is what you've done is not nice. What you have not done is not nice. Would you try, try to make sure that they apologize to one another. But they're at 5 and 2, so they can still do that. I'm not sure whether this works in future, but my daughter thinks I distract them too much, and not really have, kind of hard discipline. So I leave her to comment on that part. But I think I'm doing my job.
Sorry, I'm laughing because my mom is not disciplined. As in, okay, obviously that's from my perspective. But anyway, it's like a long running thing between her and between us, because I'm like, Mom, you have to establish boundaries. It's not about distracting them. So I would say for these kinds of questions, again, very family specific. I have friends who have very strict parents. So basically the grandparents are stricter than the parents. And I would say like, and then for my family, it's like I'm way stricter than my mom. Yeah, so I would say it's really based on family dynamic, and the key thing is to keep communication lines open. And the parents should be the one establishing the boundaries. So I have friends who are very comfortable saying, okay, mom and dad, when you guys take care of my kids, if they do ABC with anything within these boundaries, you both are allowed to reprimand my kids, sit them down and stop whatever they're doing. If a certain very serious event, you can smack their hand and say, we smacked you because this is not allowed. For example, I don't know, they throw things out the window or something. So it's really about setting the boundaries, and I believe that parents need to set the boundaries. Of course, these boundaries can be mediated and negotiated with the grandparents according to their comfort levels, because I also don't really see grandparents as like our slaves lah. Although maybe at the start I did. I was like, Mom, you have to listen to me. It's my kid, and she was like, excuse me, I'm not your maid. I'm not your slave. I also have my own experience. So we really navigated a lot of these tensions at the start. Yeah. But one thing my mom said is true, that the discipline should come very swiftly. Like it shouldn't. Oh.
That's real. Real time.
Bedtime shenanigans, same as dinner time. It's like two worst parts of the day. Yeah. So it really is about I would say keep communication lines open and keep the discipline very swift, because kids, like, they forget, like they don't really, if like they did something wrong and then 2 hours later you're like, this is the discipline for what you did 2 hours ago. They literally have no idea what you're disciplining for. Yeah, so it's important to have some boundaries, have some ground rules, have some kind of like house rules that everyone agrees to and everyone abides by, which means like you and the caregivers, including the grandparents. Yeah.
So just to add on also, so I kind of sometimes think that, she's already said that I think she's a bit too strict, but I would not interfere. When she's disciplining, I will not interfere, because I don't want to be seen as the rescuer. And then they will come to me and say, oh, grandma is the one who will get me out of this. Because I know my role, and I'm there to support my daughter. Even when there are times when I think she's a bit too strict, I will just stay. And then, if need to, I will text her later. I think that was a little bit too strict, and then kind of like try to share with her my view. But I will not share it in front of the children, because I respect her as the parents.
Okay, thank you. So there's one question that's actually our first question on the list, and it goes like this. So I'll ask it to Dr. David. What about using sarong cradle? I use sarong cradle when raising my son, but he told me doctors recommend against using sarong cradle. So, Dr. David, any thoughts?
So I think the general concern is that in the sarong cradle, because it's it is soft, so it's folds on it can potentially fold under the baby. There's a concern for choking risk or suffocation. So if in the middle of the night, if there's a chance that the baby may get suffocated and then may have difficulty breathing. So basically, that's a safety concern. I think that in general, if the child is supervised, I think a sarong cradle is fine. What we sometimes because the good thing about sarong cradle is because it makes it easier for the child to be put to sleep. But what we would sometimes recommend would be that if you use the sarong cradle to put the child to sleep, after the child has fallen to sleep already, you may want to take the child out of the sarong cradle and then put the child to sleep on a proper cradle. It may be dangerous to let the child sleep through the night or unsupervised on the sarong cradle.
Okay, thank you. Now I just want to revisit a point I think that Alison and Ariel were briefly alluding to, and this time I would actually like to hear from Ariel as well as Dr. David. What should I do if my mother refuses to listen, even if I present all the medical facts and evidence to her? So Ariel, and then Dr. David after that.
Um, I would say, this one is a bit hard. I would say also give them some time. Yeah, so the sleep training thing, my mom was like, this is child abuse and whatever, right? And I was like, oh, okay, but there are studies that kind of back it up. It's a, I think I learned to recognize that we both grew up in very different times, and I shouldn't be so quick to judge her also, or like be angry at her and like, oh my gosh, this woman is so uneducated, the kind of like very judgmental thoughts and all that lah. Um, and I gave her time, and also what I did was that if my mom really can't accept, like for example, sleep training, if she just couldn't accept it, so I was like, fine, um, I will just do all the sleep timings, you know. So it's about owning your own decisions also. And if you really like, for example, I have friends who work and who may not have as much time with their children, then I also feel that uh, you have to weigh your priorities. Like, do you have to die do this? And if not, you have to choose between that. You can't have it all up, basically. If your mom is helping you at very critical junctures and she really doesn't believe in something, I don't think you can force them. It becomes very, very, very sensitive. So okay, I don't really know how helpful I'm being, but yeah. It's also a process of discovering each other's worldviews, each other's approaches, each other's experiences. But at the end of the day, I would say maintain the relationship as far as possible, unless it's a recurring pattern. If it's a recurring pattern of her like disrespecting or like always pushing your boundaries, then I think you might have to consider, like, I would say, other alternative forms of help. If not, the relationship might come to a total breakdown. So it really is very, very dependent on your situation at home, and how much capacity you have, how much you are inviting your mom in, or your mother-in-law in, or your parents-in-law in. Yeah. That that's as much as I think I can like weigh in on this matter. But I definitely disagree with my mom, like, and show her all the facts, and she's just like, you of you are fine, man. You guys grew up, you guys didn't die. I don't think it's a do or die situation. She won't say that I'm wrong, but she'll just say that I'm not comfortable with it, and you know, you just gotta accept me in this fold. So really, it's a very live situation now.
Okay, Dr. David, any thoughts? So what to do if, let's say, your mother, refuses to listen even after you present all the medical facts and evidence?
So I preface by saying I'm glad neither my parents nor my in-laws are in this talk. I checked. Okay, joking. I would largely defer to Ariel's views on this. I would agree with her. I think it's a very difficult situation sometimes. My only take on this is that I think there is no correct answer on this. I generally would tell parents when they ask me this question that it really does depend on their own family. I don't think that there's always a right or wrong answer. I generally would defer to parents' views, because I think at the end of the day, they are the caregivers. The parents are the true caregivers of the child. They're also the ones who have to deal with the fallout and the consequences of any decisions made. But at the same time, I think family is complex. So we also cannot entirely shout out grandparents, because I think grandparents help out with the child. And I think we live in a society whereby filial piety remains important. I think we all don't want, I mean, I'm sure we don't want our children to next time shut us out, right? When we have our own grandchildren, right? So again, I think this is a very complex question, and it depends from family to family. Yeah.
Okay. So I
Oh,
think
sorry,
there's another
can I
question.
just add, I
Sure.
just wanted to add like, I think my mom was like, I don't know if it was my mom or I read it online, they were like, your child is also watching how you interact with your parents. Then I think there was like a wake up call for me. I was like, oh my goodness, do I want my kid talking to me like that? Oh, then I was a bit nicer. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that. Next question. So let me ask Dr. David this one. When is it best to send my baby to infant care? Worried baby gets sick easily when very young.
Well, I think this is a very loaded question. I mean, again, I think at the end of the day, right, life is about weighing risk and benefits. So infant care has its risks, but it also has its benefits. Quite clearly, the main risk is of course infection. Then also the need to trust a stranger to look after your own child. But at the same time, it's balanced against logistics. Oftentimes, I think Singapore is a society whereby for a lot of families, if both parents are not working, it's very hard to make ends meet. So infant care is almost a necessity, almost a necessity. So again, I think it's just about weighing risk and benefits. If the logistics of your family situation is such that you have to send to infant care, then by all means go ahead. I think infections can be treated. I always just tell people that, hey, it's training your immune system. Nothing wrong with catching some viral infections as a baby. I think it's part of growing up. But obviously, if you have other alternatives, if someone can care for the child at home, nothing wrong with delaying as well. Is there a too young to send to the child to for infant care? I don't think that there is really a too young. I don't think that there's really a too young. Again, obviously, the later you delay entry into infant care, there are obviously going to be benefits for maternal child or rather family child bonding. But at the same time, it just needs to be weighed against logistical requirements of the family.
Actually, there are some studies on infant care. Okay, but I must preface that these studies are also done overseas that show that institutionalized care has uh they give a certain age, like 3 years old or something. But because according to their studies, it shows that direct family care, which means anyone who's related to you, is always better than institutionalized care lah. So I mean that's always a general principle. Again, like Dr. David said, it really depends on your own situation and logistical, what you can manage logistically, and there's really no right or wrong answer on this question. But yeah.
Okay, so we are very near the end of today's panel discussion. Can I invite all panelists to leave one final thought for the audience before we close? So let's start with Alison, and then Ariel, and then finally Dr. David.
I remember this part whenever I tell people, oh, I became a grandma. And they were like, wow, so good. Now you just have to spoil them, your grandchildren. But I came across this line which spoke a lot to me. It says, grandchildren are too precious to be spoiled. So I just kind of like urge all of us to be partners with our children to bring about the grandchildren that we want.
I still think my mom spoils them a bit too much, but it's okay. I think my okay. Actually, I saw some interesting questions. I just wanted to say, okay, this is not my closing thought. I just want to say, like, the moment you have your second kid or third kid, right, the kid gets sick like super early on. So we learn how to just roll with like young sick kids, and then we go to the doctors for help. So I wouldn't worry too much about the whole like, is my child too young to get sick kind of thing, because eventually they will. although it's very, very tough. So my second daughter had HFMD and stomach flu like 3 or 2 months into the whole thing because she caught it from my elder sister, and it was like super painful. But there's medicine and there are doctors, so all the best to anyone considering this. Yeah. Okay. So I guess my closing thought is that it's really about um keeping the first things first. So know what's important to you. Family is important to you. Prioritize family. Uh, I used to prioritize perfection, but perfection and wanting to be that perfect ideal mom. But I realized that I was losing my relationships in the course of that. So I'm trying to keep the first things first and focusing on the major issues and learning how to take a back seat, learning how to be a bit more lax on the minor issues. Yeah.
I think my take home message for this would be to be open. I think largely to be open. I think sometimes we don't always have the right answers. Sometimes grandparents are right, and sometimes the parents are right. And sometimes the right answer for one family may not be the right answer for another family. So I think the most important thing is for families is to communicate and open dialogue. I think if we find that the parents are in conflict with grandparents, it's important just to talk to them about it and try and work out what the differences are. If there's a gap in knowledge, then everyone should just agree to read up a little bit and learn, or just come and find a doctor, right? And try and find out the correct answer. So at the same time, it's also important not to fight too much, I think. Yeah, I think that end of the day, parenting and children should be a joyous process. We don't really want people to become too upset and to fight too much. So yeah, I think if there's any take-home message, it should be that sometimes we don't always have the right answers. We should acknowledge that, and we should be willing to learn what the right answers are, I think.
Okay, so once again, thank you very much to all our panelists. And now, let me just introduce you to our next session. And I think many of these issues that we've all discussed actually might well be addressed in our very, very next session. And so, our next session for apparently, it will take place on 15th of April at the same time, 8 to 9 p.m. And this will be on the topic how to manage intergenerational differences when raising grandchildren. I'll give you a link to the sign up in the very next slide. So here we are. And this is a QR code that you can scan. And please feel free to scan this QR code. I'll leave it on this page for a while. Now, scan this QR code. It will take you to a page that will give you a couple of links. One of them is to sign up for the next session. And then it'll give you other links to Grander Together's Facebook page, Telegram channel, and YouTube channel as well. So please, on your way out, please take a few moments to fill out the feedback form that will appear on your screen after you sign out. And this feedback is going to be very, very helpful to us as we plan future discussions, dialogues. And I think looking at the number of questions that have come in, I think there are many burning topics on your heart and on your mind. So feel free to share that with us in the feedback form as well. And of course, that will help us to serve you better and to talk about topics that you care about. So once again, thank you very much. Thank you for your active participation. And
Oh, sorry. Can I
feel
say something?
yes.
Yeah, feel free to reach out to us if you have any more questions. I think there's a contact form. Let us know if like you guys need support or like just want to talk about some issues. We are trying to kind of also see, I mean, everyone has their own struggles, and we are very happy to kind of speak to anyone who wants to chat a bit further. Yeah.
Okay, so that's from Ariel. So thank you once again. And please, on your way out, please fill up the feedback form and scan the QR code if you would like to follow us for more developments. Okay, and thank you very much. Take care and good night.